and welcome to TiddyTalk.
Hi,
Hi.
We are your hosts. I'm Sam,
I'm Mallory.
And I'm Rachel.
and today we are going to be talking about three different things. We're slowing things down today, cutting something off, just because we got some serious stuff to cover. Our first segment is a woman was attacked by a lion in a Russian circus. We'll be talking about John Cena, who was criticized for remarks during an interview that he made in regards to Thailand. And we'll be talking about the 215 Indigenous bodies that were discovered under residential schools as of recently. Stay tuned. So, in our first segment today, we are talking about the woman in Russia who was attacked by a lion. It says in this article that I have here, in a rather spine-chilling event, a circus trainer was attacked by a lioness during a show in Russia as a horrific video of the incident went viral on social media. The audience was terrified as the lioness jumped upon the trainer, clawed, and sank her teeth into him. This happened on May 26, 2021, by the way. Pretty recent.
But did he deserve it?
That I actually don't know. The actual place that owns the circus or whatever. I'm not sure if the woman was, deserving of it, but the circus hasn't actually come forward and said anything. Like, they don't, obviously no circus is going to admit that they abuse their animals or anything, but it says here that as soon as the lioness pounced upon trainer Maxim Orlov along with other members of the staff, all of them made every attempt to fend off the animal with poles. However, owing to the attack, Maxim received several injuries that were treated in a hospital in Moshkovo. Pardon me if I butchered that. The entire episode was so horrific that a pregnant woman suffered an epileptic seizure from shock, Daily Mail reports.
My God.
I know. One of the witnesses of the incident added, the lioness went berserk. When we ran away, there was a wild roar from the animals. The tamer was attacked. A pregnant woman had an epileptic seizure from fright. An ambulance was called. The trainer, however, was not angered about the incident and said, cases such as today are rare, but animals are animals. The lioness will not perform again following the attack, he said, adding, we will negotiate with the zoos to exchange her for a little lion cub. And I will just say, disclaimer, I haven't seen this, but it may be disturbing for some people, so viewer discretion.
Боже мой! Ой-ой-ой! Офигеть! Ой! О, боже мой! Вы видели? Ой-ой-ой-ой! Ой! Офигеть! Ну его нахер! Надо уходить отсюда!
What I don't get is why is he, it attacks him, right? And then it stops attacking him, and he's still swatting at it. So no wonder why it fucking started attacking him again.
That's what I was gonna say. And then not only that, but I feel like the stick probably scared the lion.
Yeah.
It probably shocked the lion or made it think oh, that they're going to attack me or something.
Yeah, I don't agree with zoos.
Yeah, I was
It's when the trainer walks in, smacking the stick against his hand or whatever he's doing, you could see the lion look over, and it kind of looks like the lion gets scared.
Yeah.
And then it attacks him, and then it doesn't help that he just keeps antagonizing it by smacking it.
Right.
So yeah, he walks in. But I was thinking what you said with him smacking the sticks, maybe that's a way of punishment. Maybe that's the way that the circus punishes their animals is with those sticks, or in some relation to the sticks, because the way the lion reacts almost like it was triggered by something.
That's what. But it's how do you punish a wild animal? Wild animals can't be punished. They're simply wild animals.
Well, judging by the sticks that the other people were using to nudge the animal off of the trainer, it looks like the stick is just there to kind of push the lion back or kind of poke it when it's getting too close. I don't know, that's just my assumption from looking at it. I don't think I don't know. To be honest, we have no idea if the lion is abused with those sticks. We have no idea.
Probably.
So it could be, it could not be. We have no idea.
I think keeping animals, forcing them to perform is abuse in itself, to be honest. I don't agree with circus animals, or I don't even agree with most zoos, but hey, you want to see a lion, you better risk your life for it.
Yeah, well, zoos are only, I don't personally find that zoos are only good depending on the animals that they house and
Yeah.
if they're actually good zoos, of course. Because
Yeah.
like there are some zoos that have extinct animals or animals that are going extinct, and they're there for a reason.
Yeah, I'm fine with those, like especially like
But
sanctuaries and
when you
stuff.
have like a bear, like a black bear, which is not extinct, it's kind of like why? Or like when you
Why?
have a moose, it's like okay, moose are cool, but like why?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like zoos usually I find that they should just be turned into sanctuaries or something. But when you have multiple animals that are extinct, it's kind of hard to make it like a specific sanctuary. But you like as long as the animals are well kept, there's no issue. It's when they
Mhm.
starve them or give them a habitat that's not fit for them or they give them shitty water. It's kind of like, I would rather see the animal free and see how it does than live in your shitty zoo.
Who else played Zoo Tycoon and let the animals out on the guests? I do that all the time.
Me with Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Be free, motherfucker. Yeah, you'd be getting off a roller coaster and all of a sudden you just get bodied by a jaguar. It's part of the experience, guys. Come to my park, I swear. I'm very good at that.
I think the thing that bothers me about this, though, is that the trainer is just like, oh, well, you know, whatever. We'll negotiate with the zoo and we'll exchange her for a lion cub.
Bitch.
Like, the animal attacks, well, as far as we know, once. That's on camera, and they immediately are exchanging it for a baby.
Yeah, they're probably putting it down, that's why. Oh no, a wild animal acts like a wild animal. Better kill it. Bang.
Oh no, it bit me because I touched it in a spot that it shouldn't be touched. Oh no, my arm.
It was the fact, too, that in that video, the lion was, like, playing with the other one. And then when the trainer, whatever, trainer performer, when the dude came out, then he got upset.
Yeah, I feel like he did something, or maybe, like I said, maybe the lion got it surprised, or
I don't think they do it unprovoked, because it seemed to be in a good mood before.
yeah. So it must have been something that shocked him anyway.
Yeah.
What is that picture? He's like,
Yeah, so this was in the Ukraine. This is from April 5th, 2019, so it is a bit older, but I gathered it as kind of like a backup of that, you know, animals should not be in captivity or being forced to perform, because this was another lion, so it's similar very much to the first one, except it was a male lion instead of a female. In this particular case, members of the audience at a circus in Ukraine captured the terrifying moment a lion turned on its trainer and attacked him. The incident took place at the Lugansk state when the aggressive cat managed to overpower well-known circus trainer Hamada Kota. A video going viral online shows the lion attacking its trainer, pinning him to the ground. As the music stops abruptly, the crowd can be heard shrieking in fright. Thankfully, Mr. Kuta managed to regain the upper hand by pushing the lion away, which is then seen retreating. So the difference too is that this guy fucking overpowered. He managed to push the lion away, where the other one was just like,
How the hell do you push away a lion?
yeah, what the fuck? This thing's like 2 tons. Also, before we watch this, I will say viewer discretion again. I don't know what happens in this video, but it may be disturbing for some viewers.
Yeah, that looked like he was just swatting something in the lion's face.
That looked like that honestly looks like my cat getting annoyed when she can't catch the laser pointer.
Maybe he was getting annoyed.
So he's like poking him or whatever, and the lion's swatting at it. It honestly looks like the lion got annoyed. I'm that woman who grabbed her purse and just got up.
She's like, oh, what the fuck?
She's like, shit, I'm getting out of here.
I'm done with this.
So, Mr. Kuta, who escaped the attack with no major injuries, was quoted as saying by the Metro, "The lion jumped at me and bit me, but thank God not on my neck. He immediately let me go. My back, arm, and leg were hurt. I called up one lion, and the second one attacked me from the front." He added that the attack did not stop the show and only occurred because the circus lions were unsettled after arriving at a new location. The most important thing for me is to see children in the audience. Of course, I was covered in blood, but I asked everyone to calm down and started the performance all over again from the beginning. The incident had prompted many animal welfare organizations like Big Cat Rescue and Animal Defenders International to ask for a ban on big cats performing in circuses. And it even says at the end of this article, a similar incident occurred 2 years ago in China when a lion was filmed dragging his trainer across the stage during a show.
He just wanted to show him off.
I've heard of Big Cat Rescue, I think. I'm pretty sure. I used to follow them on Vine, I think.
Isn't that Carol
Isn't
Baskin?
that Carol Baskin?
Carol Baskin.
Yeah, it's Carol
What?
Baskin.
That's Carol
I just looked it up.
Baskin.
It's
Is it?
Carol Baskin, yep.
Carol
Oh, then it's
Baskin.
not. It's not the one that I followed on Vine. Then there was like a guy who had a sanctuary for like big cats, and he visited them every day. That's
Fucking
not what I was thinking.
Carol Baskin. Yeah.
Sorry, Carol, wasn't you?
Damn.
But and it's a repeating theme, being as this article mentions it happening in China as well. So maybe we shouldn't have wild animals performing.
Probably not.
We shouldn't, but people pay for it. That's why they keep doing it.
People need
That's
to
true.
fuck off.
Because if you see the audience in the videos, like there's quite a lot of people there. That it's not as unnoticed as people think circuses are.
No, I honestly didn't think circuses like still were a thing, but well, this proves that they are. At least over here, I don't think they're really a thing anymore.
I've never been to a circus.
I don't remember there being lines either.
It's not that exciting, don't worry. You just sit there and you stare at animals and you're like, okay.
I mean, animals pretty cool.
That's true. But like you can't pet them, can't go near them, so you're just kind of sitting there like,
Yeah, fuck that. I'd rather go to a farm carnival where I can pet the cows.
Moving on to our second segment. Mr. John Cena is under some fire lately.
What
A
did he
beloved
do?
man. Honestly, what he did isn't even that big of a deal. This article was posted on May 25th, 2021.
21?
So Mr. Cena, a star of the newest Fast and Furious movie, posted a video apology in Mandarin saying, "I'm really sorry. You have to understand that I love and respect China." The reason he did this, so he's joining a long list of celebrities and companies that have profusely apologized after taking an errant step through China's political minefields. Mr. Cena posted a video apology in Mandarin on Weibo, a Chinese social network. So he posted a video on Weibo, which is a Chinese social network. Beijing considers Taiwan a self-ruled democratic island to be a breakaway province and claims it as part of China. Referring to it as a country is often an offensive assertion in China, where matters of sovereignty and territory are passionate issues driven by strong sense of nationalism. So Mr. Cena apologized for a statement he made in an interview with the Taiwanese broadcaster TVBS. In it, he told the reporter in Mandarin, "Taiwan is the first country that can watch the film." I made a mistake, Mr. Cena said in his apology video. "Now I have to say one thing which is very, very important. I love and respect China and Chinese people." He continued, "I'm very sorry for my mistakes. Sorry. I am really sorry. You have to understand that I love and respect China and Chinese people." So this I didn't actually know until I read this article, but Mr. Cena has studied Mandarin for years and regularly posts on Weibo, but many of his Chinese fans were not quick to forgive. "Please say Taiwan is part of China in Chinese, otherwise we will not accept your apology," one Weibo user responded in a comment that was liked thousands of times. Western companies and celebrities that do business in China, and it can be a very big business, especially for the entertainment industry, are often forced to walk a political tightrope to not offend Chinese sensibilities. For many, this is achieved by staying as far away from politics as possible, steering clear of questions about mass detentions in Xinjiang. Sorry, I'm so terrible with pronunciation. I don't want to pronounce that wrong. Xinjiang? Steering clear of questions about mass detentions in oh my god, I am so sorry if I'm butchering this. Xinjiang. Pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong or the status of Taiwan and Tibet. The consequences for those who dabble in Chinese politics have been made clear. The NBA struggled to contain a fierce backlash when Daryl Morey, then the general manager of the Houston Rockets, tweeted in support of the Hong Kong protests in 2019. LeBron James, one of basketball's biggest stars, offered China a friendly response, saying Mr. Morey wasn't educated on the situation at hand by supporting the protesters. Movie studios often preemptively ensure their content won't run afoul of Chinese censors, a practice once mocked by South Park. But quite often, the political problems arise in cases where a company appeared to have no idea it was accidentally crossing a line. That list would include Gap, which in 2018 created a t-shirt that omitted Taiwan, parts of Taipei, and islands of the South China Sea from the map of China on a shirt's design. The luxury brands Versace, Givenchy, and Coach said in 2019 they all made mistakes when they produced t-shirts that identified Hong Kong and Macau as countries. Versace reiterates that we love China deeply and resolutely respect China's territory and national sovereignty, the company said in a statement. China ordered 36 airlines to remove references to Taiwan, Macau, and Hong Kong as separate countries on their websites in 2018, a step the Trump administration dismissed as Orwellian nonsense. That year, Marriott clarified on its Weibo account that it will absolutely not support any separatist organization that will undermine China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, after a customer survey listed the territories as separate countries. Daimler, the German car maker, apologized in 2018 after the Mercedes-Benz Instagram account quoted the Dalai Lama, who many in China view as a dangerous separatist advocating Tibetan independence. The release of F9 was delayed for a year during the coronavirus pandemic. It drew an estimated 162 million in tickets in 8 international markets, including China and South Korea. And all this happened over the weekend. As the newest film in a hugely successful series, F9 is seen by Hollywood as the kind of blockbuster needed to draw people back to theaters.
Interesting.
So, yeah, those would be something controversial, but no, China is just very, very sensitive when it comes to political matters. And it's very much the sense of, like, if you say anything, you're silenced, like, immediately.
There's actually a list of words you can find on the internet of things you can't say on Chinese media or else you get blocked.
Oh,
What?
And it's usually something political or something that China did wrong, and they don't want to owe up to it, basically.
Yeah, they take their image very seriously. That was the same when there was a doctor. He's passed away now, unfortunately, rest in peace. But he came forward before coronavirus really started, like, going viral, essentially. And he said, we have a serious disease here, something's going on, like, we need to warn people something's happening.
yeah.
And people are traveling here and they're taking it back, and China's like, shut up, shut the fuck up.
And then,
They're like, don't talk about it.
And then he died.
Yes, and then unfortunately he got coronavirus and he passed away. And I've seen other things happening during the coronavirus too, where citizens are coming forward and they're saying, like, China is not great. They're not helping us. They're not giving us solutions. They're letting us die in the streets.
Yeah, I remember that. That was horrible.
And then after those few people came out, it just stopped, and we didn't hear about anything like that again. I haven't heard anything about it since. I mean, I'm pretty sure we can all guess what happened, but it's very
Yeah.
But yeah, like the article said too, like, time and time again, if you do something as small as referring to Taiwan as a separate country, they get pissed.
Sheesh. Well, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. But I mean, poor John Cena.
John Cena is such a sweet man. He's genuinely so nice.
You gotta learn to, like, just let things slide, you know?
And so, I don't know if they're still attacking him or if they're still trying to get him canceled or his movie banned or whatever, but John Cena is, like, the sweetest man ever. Like, leave him alone. I do have this video here of his apology that is in Mandarin. There's subtitles, so we don't have to worry about that.
在《速度与激情》就我做很多采访，很多，所以在一个采访，我有一个错误，所有人问我，如果我可以用中文，我爱更尊重中国跟中国人，我很抱歉对我的错误。Been a long time, don't little brother. You always say never turn your back on family.
Who cares about that? Sorry, John Cena, but I don't like the Fast and Furious movies.
Well, his Mandarin seems to be getting pretty good. It's a very hard language to learn, so.
But the person in that video said too, they said, please, like, keep your nose out of China's political issues and whatever. But John Cena didn't even mean to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's like they forget that humans make mistakes.
And he's like I've said like 3 times already, but he's genuinely so nice. He's just like, he's so nice to everyone he comes across. I'm sure the last thing that John wanted to do was offend a big group of people.
Yeah.
But it's China, so not much you can say about that. Unfortunately, a very communist country that one day will take steps forward, but
We'll see about that.
So moving on to our third segment now, our third and last. This is very, very tragic. It happened very recently. This article that I found was posted on the 28th of May, and very tragic and very unfortunate in the sense that people in Canada are still choosing to ignore this very obvious problem. But if you didn't hear about it, in Canada, remains of 215 children were found at an Indigenous residential school site.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
It's a mass burial too.
A mass grave containing the remains of 215 Indigenous children has been discovered on the grounds of a former residential school in the interior of southern British Columbia. The grim discovery at the former school near the town of Kamloops was announced late on Thursday by the... I am so bad at names. I apologize if I butcher this. The Tekalumps Tshwepemic people after the site was examined by a team using ground-penetrating radar. I apologize if that pronunciation was wrong. We had a knowing in our community that we were able to verify. To our knowledge, these missing children are undocumented deaths, said Roseanne, who is the chief of that tribe. Some of the remains belong to children as young as 3 years old, but the causes and timing of their deaths are not yet known. At this time, we have more questions than answers, said Casimir. The Kamloops Indian Residential School was established in 1890 under the leadership of the Roman Catholic Church and closed in 1978. It was part of a cross-Canada network of residential schools created to forcibly assimilate Indigenous children by removing them from their homes and communities and forbidding them from speaking their native languages or performing cultural practices. Physical, emotional, and sexual abuse were rampant within these institutions, as was forced labor. At least 150,000 children attended such schools in what a historic 2015 Truth and Reconciliation Commission described as cultural genocide targeting Canada's Indigenous people. In documents submitted to the commission, former Kamloops attendees described the harsh conditions of the school, which did not receive enough per capita funding from the government to pay for its costs. George Manuel, who attended in the 1920s, said every Indian student smelled of hunger. The school was described as being cold in the winter and unsanitary. The same documents mentioned that students were exposed to outbreaks of measles, the same documents mention that students were exposed to outbreaks of
measles, tuberculosis, influenza,
and other contagious disease.
Yeah.
In a 1935 report on a death from measles at the school, an agent noted that the sleeping accommodation for 285 pupils in the school consists of 5 dormitories, which are crowded. During an epidemic, it is impossible to properly isolate the patients and contacts. Violence against the Kamloops residential school students continued until its closure. The TRC recounted that in the 1960s, the school principal at Kamloops advocated for putting older boys who got into fights into a boxing ring, put them in a ring with gloves, and supervise a boxing match until both boys are too tired to care anymore. Indigenous communities have long believed mass graves of residential school students existed, and proving it has been a decades-long process. It matters because the story of secret residential school mass graves is an urban legend, said a column in British Columbia news outlet. The TRC has calculated at least 3,201 residential school deaths, although the true total may never be known due to unaccounted deaths and destroyed files. So, for anyone who doesn't know what a residential school is, it was basically schools all over Canada that were run by white people, and it was their goal to take young kids away from their families and parents to, as it says, quote unquote, get the Indian out of them. And they would abuse them, as it said, force labor upon them, and they would do terrible things to these Indigenous children to try and make them white, I guess. They didn't want them to practice their culture, didn't want them to be themselves. They wanted them to morph them into something else. It was a literal genocide. So Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau described the recent discovery of more than 200 bodies on the grounds of what was the country's largest Indigenous residential school, where Indigenous children were sent after being removed from their communities, as a painful reminder of that dark and shameful chapter of the nation's history.
Bitch, please. That's not a chapter. That's like fucking a big chunk of our goddamn history. A chapter that's like a book long. The whole book.
It wasn't that long ago either, because I read that the last residential school closed in 1996.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is not that long ago.
Dude, my sister was born in 94, and I was born in 97, so...
I was born in 96.
When I went to school, college in Thunder Bay, I met a lot of Native Americans who, because they're more, like, there's more reses, like, up north. I don't know, none of them They invited me to like learn and partake in their culture, but none of them ever spoke about like this side of it to me. I mean, I can understand why it's traumatic as all fucking hell. This is something that I didn't even learn about until like this article came out. Like I honestly didn't even know residential schools were a thing. And finding this out, it's so disturbing and it's so disgusting. And I managed to find this article about a woman who actually survived by, like, she went through a residential school and she came out alive. Alsenia White, who is now 67, is illiterate. She gets by with the help of her children and grandchildren. Alsena was taught at the Blue Quills Indian Residential School near St. Paul, Alberta. From the age of 5 to 16, she lived at the federal government-funded school, ushered through grade after grade. Yet no one seemed to notice or care that she could neither read nor write. To them, I was just another Indian, she says, of the Catholic nuns and priests who administered her education. Leaning slightly forward as if to make sure it is safe for her to speak, Alsenia continues, I tell people I spent 10 years in jail, even though I never committed a crime. It has been more than 50 years since she felt enslaved inside the walls of the school, but the memories still haunt her. Some of them she had suppressed, she explains, but they returned with a vengeance years later, plunging her into fear and anxiety. Others she has carried with her whole life. So the first bit that she talks about is titled You're Going to Hell. She says, there's that little girl inside of me who was severely abused, tormented, and told you're going to hell, she says, sitting in the cultural room at the Boys and Girls Club in her home reserve of Saddle Lake Cree Nation. The club serves young people from the reserve, providing social support and resources. The circular room is painted bright yellow and represents a traditional sharing circle, an important part of the Cree way of life, which offers a safe space to exchange stories, solve disputes, and encourage healing. It was a federal government-mandated initiative with hopes to guide and inspire First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and Canadians in a process of truth and healing leading towards reconciliation and renewed relationships based on mutual understanding and respect. The next part of it is titled They Threw My Name Out the Window. Alsenia remembers the dread that she and other children on Saddle Lake would feel towards the end of each summer. Their parents were mandated by the federal government to deliver them to the Catholic Church on the reserve, where farm trucks waited to return them to the Blue Quills residential school. If the parents refused, they faced arrest and imprisonment. Alsenia recalls how the children were loaded up like cattle onto the trucks and driven the 15 miles to the school, where they would stay until the following summer. It was a game of survival from that point on, she says. The driver alone was dangerous. The trucks were overcrowded. There was only a chain to hold on to, and the children would often end up with broken bones from falling. Alsenia says she never felt love at the school. In fact, she never felt human. Until she was 13 years old, she was known by the number 11. From the age of 13 to 16, she was number 39. I was not Alsenia. They threw my name out the window, she says. Sometimes, though, the French-speaking nuns would call her something other than her number. Dirty savage, she remembers them saying. To this day, she says she despises the French language.
I don't blame her.
Excuse me. They were on a mission to civilize the Indians, she explains, by changing our language, changing our religion, changing us as Cree people. Speaking Cree was forbidden at the school. The punishment was being beaten with a strap, scolded, and made to miss a meal, but the pupils spoke it in secret anyway. The children would find ways to help others for being punished for breaking that rule and others. Later that day, in the basement of the former school, Alsenia knocks an old vertical steel pipe. If you knock just so, she explains, the girls could all hear us upstairs. Certain knocks would mean, I'm coming up now to give you some food, she says of how they would sneak food to friends who had been sent to bed hungry. Alsenia also remembers reunions in what was called the parlor, the room where parents would come to visit. The visits were on the weekends, but Alsenia's parents could only make it when they could find a ride as they had no car of their own. That was just a few times a year, but even when she could see them, the meetings were awkward because her parents spoke little English, and with a nun and priest supervising nearby, she was unable to talk to them in Cree. They were always watching us, she said. A sense of shame about who she was and where she came from was installed in Alsenia. The priests and nuns worked in the name of a holy god, and as a child, Alsenia struggled to understand the god of the Menja. I hated God, she recalls with a shudder. I thought, why is there a real wicked God? Why a God that makes you feel terrible of being a native person? Why is there a God that doesn't care about your feelings at all? She adds with sadness. In the next part of this, she talks about her memories of abuse. It says, when Alsenia was in her mid-50s, she met a lawyer working with survivors of the residential schools. The federal government was compensating residential school survivors as part of the TRC, and the lawyer wanted to know if Alsenia had experienced abuse at the school. She told the lawyer about the physical and verbal abuse she had endured, but she was sure she had not experienced any sexual abuse. Then, later that day, she had a flashback. I was sitting on my bed, putting away clothes. The memories rushed back, she says. I saw what happened to me. I was looking into the air on my bed, reliving memories. I remembered what happened to me, and I started to scream. I was crying, and I thought, what the fuck? The long-suppressed memory Alsenia was recalling was of being by a nun. Through long, heavy breaths and tears, Alsenia describes the abuse, one incident in particular when she was 8 years old and being bathed by a nun. In the last part of this article is quoted, I don't want people to forget. In 1971, Blue Quills Residential School became the first in Canada to be turned over to an Indigenous group to administer. The federal government was moving to phase out the schools, and Blue Quills was to be shut down. However, the residents of Saddle Lake and the surrounding Indigenous communities proposed that they take over the building for the education of Indigenous students. The federal government agreed. After about 300 people took part in a sit-up protest at the school. One of those who took part in the sit-in was Charles Wood, a former manager of the Saddle Lake Band. We have been told that native culture was not good, and that our customs were no good pagan rites for so long, and it was hard for us to believe that we were good enough to run our own schools, he recalled. But one evening, one of the elders stood up and asked, how many of you have studied up to grade 12? No hand showed. Then, how many of you have studied up to 9th grade? A few hands. See, the old man said, almost none of us can claim to have received an education, but the white man, the clergy, have been in charge of our education for over a century. We can't do worse than them. The group reached a deal with the federal government, and control of the school was handed over to them. Now it is a First Nations university, offering post-secondary education primarily to Indigenous people. It also welcomes people of all cultures to study Indigenous worldviews. Alsenia believes that sharing her experience helps her and others to heal. Not everyone has the chance to heal, however, because not everyone made it out alive. More than 6,000 children are estimated to have died in Canada's residential schools during the years they operated, most due to neglect, disease, and abuse. According to the National Post, there was no listings of any deaths at the Blue Quills residential school. Despite this, Alsenia says she recalls hearing of a student who was beaten to death by a number of the clergy at Blue Quills, but those kinds of stories were often covered up, she adds. Some children were buried in unmarked graves on residential school grounds. Others were listed as missing or discharged, and some parents were never told what happened to their children. I did have a video of Alsenia herself recalling... here it is. Yes, she recalls her time in the school.
Can you talk to me about what it was like to have a number?
Well, when I was 5 years old, I didn't know what number I was. When I was in little girls, when I was about 8, 9 years old, my number is number 11. And then when you became a woman, I became a woman at the age of 13, and I was moved downstairs. And my number was number 39 till I left this place. And never really dawned on me till later on in life that my name was scrapped out the window and I was given a number. And that how you were trained and groomed how to respond to your number 39 when you were called.
What did that feel like?
Degraded. I felt like I wasn't human. I felt like everybody wants to be called by their name, not something like that. And I think that was a way to belittle you, but when you're in a place like that, you have to accept that's going to be your number till you're here, till you leave this place when you're 16.
If you could just tell me how it felt when you first saw your number here, what that was like for you.
When I first saw my number, I couldn't believe they kept all this here. I couldn't believe that they wouldn't rip it off, and I started to cry because it brought back a lot of ugly memories about being called number 39 instead of Cena. And that's why in my rest of my life I would never give anybody a number. You know, I think that was kind of like, to me, I felt like, why would they give us that? And nobody else went through that, but the Native people of Canada went through that, given numbers, and people still remember those numbers. And I did a tour a few years ago, and this lady had the same number when she was a little girl. She was number 11, and I was. And then when she became a big girl, she was number 39, and so was I, and that was so weird. And it made me think, how many 39s were there? How many numbers 11s? I looked out the window so many times and wanting to leave this place. When am I going to leave? When am I going to go? And when is that day going to come? When I looked out the window, because I seen birds flying, people were walking, and it felt like freedom. So when that day came, I never looked back, and I never came here for a long, long time because of the ugly memories I had here.
And that sounds a lot like the Holocaust to me. Given a number, not allowed to
Honestly.
have your own name. Like, damn, they should have just tattooed it on you like they did to them. Like, fuck, it's like the same thing.
It was the same too with the Holocaust. The Jews weren't allowed to speak Jewish either, were
Yeah,
they?
no.
Or am I?
They
Yeah,
weren't.
I didn't
no,
think
I
so.
don't think so. They weren't allowed to do anything except die, apparently.
But I've seen a lot of videos online as of recently. They've come up on my TikTok For You page actually, and it's a lot of an older Native generation talking about how, you know, their parents talked about residential schools, or they shared their stories, or some just said, "Oh, I don't even want to talk about it. Like, let's not talk about it." But I've seen all these videos pop up on my For You page, and it seems more common now after that this has all come out, obviously because it's gone viral. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense because so many Canadians are attempting to ignore it still and pretending like this isn't a problem.
It's, we never learned about that shit in school.
No.
Like, sheesh. It's, like, horrible. The whole time I grew up thinking, Canada's great. Canada's better than, you know, it's not better than, but, you know, like,
right.
better off than, like, history-wise. And it's like, no, we've probably pretty much on par with, like, fucking the
We're just
States
as bad.
shit. Yeah, just as bad, if not worse. Like, holy crap.
Because I know people, when Black Lives Matter, it's unfortunate to say, but it was a trend. I think a lot of people were just in it for the trend of it. But when Black Lives Matter was viral, a lot of people were like, oh, I'm so glad I live in Canada. Oh my God, I'm so glad that Canada isn't on the same level of racism as them. And it's like,
Girl, the Native people looking at that like, bitch. Are you serious?
And I don't think we're any less racist to any person of color, really. There's a lot of racism over here regarding,
yeah.
you know, people who are black or Asian or whatever.
Indigenous, Indian, everything.
We're not saints.
In Thunder Bay, it wasn't, like, I know the Native people and the police were they didn't have a very good relationship either. There's a lot of stuff going on when I went to school there. It was very eye-opening because I grew up in Elmer, and everybody, and I mean like pretty much everybody was white. We had maybe like 5 people of color in the whole town when I lived there. I didn't know anything about Native culture. I hadn't met a Native person until I moved to Thunder Bay.
My first college was built on native land, and they were very vocal about it. They had programs for the natives, and they had a program to teach about native culture. So I went into it, and you learned about like all kinds of shit, and you learned about like the medicine wheel, their land, the school was built on. Again, they were very vocal about it. They were actually I was very surprised. They were very like, hell yeah, we're built on sacred land. I thought it was great. And I actually met a girl in the program who was Native American, and the girl who taught it was also Native American, and the one wasn't. And they were just like the nicest people I've ever met.
Like, I think back to before I went to school in Thunder Bay, and it was just so gross how so many people, stereotypical things like, be careful while you're up there because natives are drunks. They're dangerous.
Like,
they're
violent and like...
Yeah, they're violent and they get in trouble a lot. And I'm like, what? Like, I had never met a native person in my life, so I was like, okay. I mean, I was like, okay, I'll take your word for it, because, like, I didn't know. But when I got to school up there, like, oh my God, Native people are nothing even close to that. Honestly, the most peaceful people that I have come across, and I made so many friends who are Native American in Thunder Bay.
Yeah, Confed was very First Nations positive. Like, whenever I'd go into school, there would usually be some sort of thing going on in the main room, like a powwow or having conferences, and I would sit in at those too whenever I could, because I didn't get any sort of education about that when I was living in Southern Ontario. It wasn't a thing, so that was nice. And my first friend that I ever met coming to Thunder Bay is First Nations, and he's like great guy. I love him. Love you, Dylan. Part of being white and having privilege is acknowledging that you're white and have privilege and unlearning things that you may have been taught about other marginalized groups of people. So you can definitely tell upon meeting someone who has done that inner work and who fucking hasn't. Just stay ignorant. So
that, and like we already said, it wasn't even that fucking long ago.
It wasn't. It really wasn't. It was in our damn lifetime.
People are acting like this happened when photos were in black and white. It didn't.
Yeah, this isn't like... Yeah. This isn't like the Holocaust where most of the survivors are pretty much dead, and even still, like, there's still families that still have trauma from it. Like, it's never gonna be something that you're gonna just get over, and it's still happening. And like, we just found out that 215 children were just killed and buried. That's not something that's an isolated incident. That probably happened everywhere. There's probably way more children and people in general that they're gonna... And you know what? They said, apparently, I don't know if this is true, but Canada's like, no, we're not going to check the other sites for bodies because that would cost $1.5 million. Okay, just print more money, bitch. What do you mean? You don't have enough goddamn money for that.
Oh my god.
Like, I don't get it.
I'm laughing because the print money argument.
Yeah, I know.
So
Me
funny
too.
to me.
Too much money. It's $1.5 million. Bitch. I think that they don't want to dig this up because then they're going to have to take ownership for more stuff that's happened. And they don't want to do that. So they're just going to be like, sweep it under the rug like they've been doing for fucking ever.
And that's disgusting because there's so many, when this came out, it proved that there are so many families out there who still don't know where their children are or what happened to them. I mean, they can assume that, unfortunately, they died in the residential school, but they don't know where, they don't know when, they don't know how. Trudeau has been promising a lot to Indigenous communities for years now, and he's not done anything.
He's not pulled through. Like, please, just at least give them goddamn fucking clean water. Come on.
Not that hard.
That's like the bare fucking minimum.
I do have this last video to finish it off. It's called Tributes Paid to Children Found Buried at Canadian Indigenous School Site with 215 Bodies Found.
But we're not going to let this go overturn it as well. Oh yeah, I've heard that. Well, now we have some evidence. We ask for all of you for your healing prayers of comfort for these children that are on their canoe journey onto the other side, and we'll have their families and our ancestors there welcoming them.
Try to even imagine what other parents, mothers were going through, and knowing that they have lost ones was very hard. We all had to take time to absorb what we were told, what we've seen, and we're still grappling through the effects. And so I know that with a heavy heart, we've been ensuring that we had those resources available, because this loss was absolutely unthinkable.
Honestly.
Well, I hope they dig up the rest of those residential schools.
They need to do something. Like anything. It's like this weird because as a politician, I know that when you present a law, it has to pass through the House, and there's things that have to be done. It's like who the hell be disagreeing with doing this though?
You'd be surprised. It's I don't know all of it. Depends on who has a certain number of seats in the House of Commons. So a lot of those people, so most politicians, as we know, are old and ugly and racist. So it's either a mix of all that, or people who are just very, very biased and stuck in their old ways, or truly don't believe that First Nations people are people.
It's true, and it's like, just kick those people out, man. Like, collectively, can we not just agree that this shit was horrible and do something about it? Why does it have to be an argument? Why does it have to be a debate?
Well, that's the thing too. Like the worst thing about the House of Commons too is it's not all. Don't majority of them are white. Don't get me wrong, but it's not all white people. Like
Yes.
that's the worst part about it. When the House of Commons, you can actually sit in on their things when they have those meetings. So it's not like it's closed off to the public. You are actually able to go and sit above and watch and listen.
I'll be piping up.
Yeah, it's definitely not the first. Like there have been cases where people have literally said "fuck you" to people
Yeah.
at the House of Commons.
I'll be like,
So,
objection, and they'll be like, this isn't a court, and I'll be like, objection, Your
I feel like
Honor.
it is now.
This isn't a court. It is now, bitch.
But that is all that we have for today's episode.
Yay. I mean,
Uh,
it's not all yay, but
A very somber episode, so
Stay tuned. Watch our social medias, our Instagram mostly, for updates on what we'll be talking about next. Every time we record, I post a new story about the topics. And thank you for listening and tuning in if you did. And we will see you next week.
please subscribe and comment and like our videos. I'm working very hard on them.
Yes, she is. She's putting blood, sweat, and tears into them.
do it
Please.
for Rachel.
I want my work, don't want my work to go unnoticed.